Hello there, everyone. Just wanted to give a little prefix to this video. I have been reading these books since I was really young. They noticed the Haunted Canada series, which, personally, that's where I grew up. I'm currently living in the US, but I still have a great appreciation for where I came from. These books were compiled together by someone named Pat Hancock, and I intend to go through the whole series if I can. So it's probably going to be about 3 to 5 stories per video, since they're fairly short. But I truly hope that you enjoy these in the long run, because I know that I love this series to death. The April Ghost. Location: Oak Bay, Victoria, British Columbia. The young woman startled George Drysdale. He hadn't seen her coming, but suddenly, there she was, standing just a few meters away on the golf course, with her arms reaching out towards him. Drysdale was frightened. He turned to get away from her, but there she was again, standing right in front of him. Frantic, Drysdale changed direction several times, but no matter which way he turned, she was there, facing him, dressed in white and looking terribly sad. Then, as suddenly as she'd appeared, she was gone. Taking a few deep breaths to realize the terror that had been building inside of him, Drysdale headed back to where his sister and where his friends were standing. They had seen him trying to avoid the woman in white, and were wondering what had been going on. After he told them what had happened, they agreed that no human being could move as fast as she did. So who was the woman they had all seen? They could think of only one possible explanation for the eerie event on that moonlit spring night. George Drysdale of Toronto, visiting his sister in Victoria, had just met up with the April Ghost. The ghost got her nickname because ever since 1936, people have been reporting seeing her in the early spring, most often in April. She also been dubbed the Golf Course Ghost because she's usually seen walking across the Royal Victoria Golf Course near the ocean's edge. Every now and then, she had also been spotted on the nearby road that winds along the coast. The ghostly young woman usually wears a long, white dress that to some looks like an old-fashioned wedding dress. The dress's outlines are fuzzy, giving her a spooky, rather wispy look. The April Ghost had been seen moving about the golf course as early as 5 p.m., but she prefers to be visiting late in the evening, an hour or two before midnight. Her scariest appearances have been materializing suddenly, rushing up to someone as if looking for help or warning the person about some nearby danger, and then melting into thin air. George Drysdale seems to have met her doing this over and over again. But why would such a restless spirit haunt a calm, quiet place like a golf course? Perhaps the answer to that question may be found in the golf course's past, where the body of a woman was found there, buried in the sand trap. The dead woman was identified as a nurse named Doris Gravelin, and she had been brutally strangled. She had last been seen walking on the golf course with her husband Victor the evening before she was killed. Doris and Victor were known to have fought a lot, and were not living together at the time of her death. Right from the start, police saw Victor as their prime suspect, but they never got to charge him with his wife's murder. While they were building a case against him, he drowned himself in the waters of Oak Bay, just along the shore of the golf course. Not long after that, reports started coming in about a mysterious woman in white haunting the area. Local believers say that Doris must be the April Ghost, but is she running to people for help, or warning them to stay away from a place where such a terrible thing happened? Both theories are popular, and there's even a third idea about what she's up to. According to some, it's usually couples who aren't married that report seeing her as George Drysdale did, rushing forward with outstretched arms and then disappearing. Perhaps she's trying to warn couples about the dangers of a bad marriage, like her own. The Nightmare Knots. Location: Montreal, Quebec. The year was 1929. The place was a house in Montreal on Rue Street, Famille, just west of Boulevard Saint Laurent and north of de Maisonneuve to passerby. The house looked perfectly normal. There was no outward sign of bizarre things going on inside, and the people that lived there were too afraid to tell anyone about their troubles. Eventually, a reporter learned what was happening in the Rue Saint Famille, but even then, the adults in the house insisted that he not include their names when this story was published. After all, they were being troubled by knots. Who would believe that knots could be scary? The knots started to appear without any warning that there was a troubling presence in the house. Not his sleeves and sweaters, or a nuisance, but could have been a practical joke. Even if the prankster refused to own up to his or her handiwork, the knots in the towels were annoying. The ones in the curtains, even more so, because they were left behind unattractive wrinkles that had to be ironed out. Soon, small, tightly twisted knots were appearing everywhere in the house, in sheets, pillowcases, tablecloths, and dish towels, in socks, shirts, dresses, and trousers. The parents were frantic. They spied on their children, hoping to catch a young culprit in the act. They even found themselves spying on each other. When they were absolutely certain no family member was tying the knots, they did the only thing they could think of to bring them peace. They asked 2 priests to come and bless the house. But despite the priests' efforts, the knots continued to appear. Finally, feeling desperate, the family called in the police. The police were intrigued with the mystery. They carefully examined the many knotted items, questioning everyone in turn and searching the house thoroughly from top to bottom. While searching the basement, one officer detected an unpleasant odor of decay. Could it be, he wondered, that a body had been buried down here, and the dead person's ghost was tying the knots so that someone would look for the body? Armed with shovels and pickaxes, the police poked about and dug up much of the basement, but found no evidence of a crime or a corpse. Another police officer came up with an experiment to make sure no human was tying the knots. Officers left several handkerchiefs in one of the rooms, and locked and sealed the door behind them. When they broke the seal and unlocked the door the next morning, they were amazed to find the cloth squares twisted into many knots. Next, they decided to have every member of the family tie knots in several different items. They then studied all the knots carefully. What they learned surprised them. The knots appearing throughout the house looked just like those tied by the youngest child. The police figured she must have been tying the knots in some sort of trance-like state, with no memory in her conscious mind of what she had been doing. From their point of view, the case was finally closed. Curiously enough, the knots stopped appearing not long after their investigation ended. But the parents were never convinced that the police had truly solved the mystery. From their point of view, their young daughter couldn't possibly have been the phantom knotter without them knowing it, and the police should have felt the same way. They were the ones who had sealed the room with handkerchiefs in it, and they were the ones who found the seal still intact the next morning with the handkerchiefs all tied up inside. Did a ghostly double of the young girl haunt the house for those few months in 1929? It seems a little hard to believe, but that explanation makes at least as much sense as the one put forward by the police, especially in light of the results of their own experiment. According to them, no human, not even a child, could have entered that sealed room. The Otherworldly Encore, Winnipeg, Manitoba. Lawrence Irving was the son of Sir Henry Irving, a famous Victorian actor. Sir Henry was the first actor ever to be honored with a knighthood. Like his father, Lawrence was also a talented stage performer. So was Lawrence's wife, Mabel Hackney. After starring in a play at Winnipeg in May 1914, the popular British couple took the train east to Quebec, where they boarded the ocean liner Empress of Ireland to return home to England. On the evening of May 29th, while the Empress of Ireland was still in the St. Lawrence River, it was rammed by a Norwegian ship. In just 14 minutes, the Empress sank, claiming the lives of 1,014 passengers and crew. Lawrence Irving and Mabel Hackney were the 2 most famous passengers to die so tragically that night. There are those who say the ghosts of Irving and Hackney never left Canada, but stayed on where the actors had given their last performances, at the Walker Theatre in Winnipeg, built in 1906. The theatre was renamed after singer Burton Cummings in 2002. It has more than 1,600 seats and is home to many performing arts events. It is also a place where creepy things happen. Things that some people blame on the spirits of the 2 famous actors. Hearing an applause in a theatre isn't scary. It's expected. But what if it's coming from the rows of empty seats? That's what's been reported at the theatre. So as the opening and closing of heavy steel doors. Who was clapping? Who was pushing and pulling on the doors? Who kept shutting dressing room doors after the night watchman made sure they were open? Are Irving and Hackney moving around the theatre, still giving encores so many years after their final bows? One security guard wouldn't find the idea of ghostly actors at the Burton Cummings Theatre such a far-fetched idea. After all, it was he who finally wedged the dressing room doors open, only to find the wedges kicked out and the doors closed the next time he checked the halls. He's also reported that his normally friendly, lively dogs would behave quite strangely when making nightly rounds with him. Instead of straining to get ahead of him, they would often press up against his legs as if frightened by something. They would also suddenly start barking for no obvious reason. Maybe the dogs could hear or sense what an investigative reporter's tape recorder picked up one night, when human ears detected nothing. Although the theatre was empty, a reporter left running for a couple hours captured sounds of footsteps, hammering, and even a few whispers. One of the whispers sounded very much like someone saying, "Please." Motorcycle Ghost. Lake Scugog, Ontario. Scugog Island is a big island in Lake Scugog, about 65 kilometers northeast of Toronto. On the island is a road that ends at a farmer's field. It has been officially named Ghost Road. A romantic spot, especially on a moonlit night, it has quite a reputation as a lover's lane, but many people who find their way there aren't really looking for privacy. They know they'll likely find quite a few cars at the end of Ghost Road, all with their lights off and all parked facing south. It's a strange scene, and between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., it often gets stranger. That's when the ghostly white light usually appears. More often than not, those waiting to see the light aren't disappointed. It's been appearing for over 4 decades on at least 200 nights of the year. It's more likely to materialize in October and November, the months on either side of Halloween. At first, the light appears off in the distance, toward the south end of the field. Over the next minute or so, it bounces along, just above the ground, moving in a northeast direction, coming closer and closer to anyone waiting to see it. Then, just before the light disappears, there's a brief flash of a small red light trailing behind it. Not everyone sees the red light, but some people have seen the white light as many as 10 times in one night. It's not unusual for it to appear at least twice in the same evening. For years now, people have tried to find the source of the light. Police have investigated it, traffic inspectors have checked it out, even airport officials have looked into a possible cause. Some daring young men have run after it on foot. Others have foolishly tried chasing it down in their cars. Officially, the cause of the light remains a mystery. According to local lore, the unofficial explanation is to be found in the tragic tale of death. One version of the story has the accident happening back in the 1950s to a teenager named Sweeney. A more specific account says it happens in 1963 to an unnamed youth. Both stories tell of a carefree young man riding his motorcycle across the fields late at night. In the darkness, he didn't see the fence wire, and so, when he hit it at top speed, he was decapitated. Ever since then, people have seen the light. And ever since then, night after night, young people gather to wait for the appearance of Sweeney, headless, forever racing his motorcycle across the fields at the end of Ghost Road. The Bloodstain in the Attic. Calgary, Alberta. Dean House was built in 1906 for Richard Burton Dean, Port Calgary's Northwest Mounted Police Superintendent. Over the years, the stately house has also served as a railway agent's home, a boarding house, and a gallery and studio space for local artists. But during the late 1980s and early 1990s, people weren't too comfortable staying at the Dean House, and who could blame them? Most of us wouldn't want to stick around a place full of mysterious noises, where chairs and dishes might suddenly start flying around and smashing on the ground. But why were such spooky things happening at the Dean House? During the time that the building was a rundown, neglected rooming house, several of its tenants were brutally murdered, and others committed suicide. Could it be that the ghosts of these unfortunate souls were haunting the same place? Some people thought so. A religious ceremony performed at the house in the mid-1990s seemed to have a calming effect. Dean House was renovated again, and over the years has been transformed into a cozy restaurant with a great view of the Elbow River. But it looks as if hungry diners are the only ones who find the atmosphere there welcoming. According to several eyewitnesses, some very strange things still happen at the Dean House. Things that suggest otherworldly spirits may still be hanging around. First, there's the matter of the mysterious woman in white. She appears in the attic every now and then. Is she the ghost of a former boarder whose husband stabbed her and then killed himself? Robert Jensen, a Dean House supervisor, thinks that she could be. It might also explain the red patch in the attic. Jensen says it looks very much like a bloodstain, adding that it changes color from fresh red to dried brown, depending on what time of the year it is. Then there are the phantoms that open and close the doors and windows, toss small items in the air, and grab and hide things when you turn around for a second. Jensen thinks the ghosts of the Dean House do stuff like this when they're bored. Apparently boredom has also driven them to make an antique phone that no longer works start ringing as if it were new. And invisible hands have been known to poke at the keys of an old typewriter on display in the small den. Some people think tales of ghosts at Dean House are simply that, tall tales intended to attract more customers to the restaurant. But when one lunch guest made that point to a staff member, her teacup started drifting up above the table. The woman accused staff of playing a trick on her, but try as she might, she couldn't figure out how they were able to pull it off. One waitress felt so uncomfortable working there that she quit after just a few months. Smelling pipe tobacco and hearing laughter in empty rooms made her nervous, but staying around to lock up at the end of the day was even spookier. When she had to turn out the lights on the upper floor and walk downstairs, she felt as if there was someone followed so closely that she could feel someone's breath on her neck. After being left to lock up a few times, she decided it was time to start job hunting again. Robert Jensen admits that the ghostly goings-on gave him the jitters at first too, but rather than being scared off, he says, "Good morning, ghosties," when he comes to work, and he ends each day with an equally friendly good night to the phantoms of the Dean House.